called a post-bachelor's research internship, and it's only really a 2-year position. Like after the 2 years, there's like, okay, you got to go to grad school or we're going to kick you out. And so that's what kind of happened to me. It was like, I really didn't want to continue in physics after those 2 years, and I really didn't want to go earn my PhD. So at sort of this crossroads, I moved back home and I decided to figure things out over the next couple months. And those couple months turned into about 2 years. So I was looking for sort of a programming job because I did a lot of programming at my research job and in college. And so I was looking around at what was available and sort of saw like, oh, well, data science is kind of similar to what I was doing before. And so I started self-studying that. And about like maybe 5 months into that, I got a sort of temporary job, but it was sort of something that was spur of the moment and it was really labor intensive. Like think like outside in the summer south, in the summer heat in the south. And so I only lasted there for a couple months. And meanwhile, I was still like applying for all these data science jobs and not having a lot of luck. And a lot of the places were looking for people with PhDs already because sort of a data science position is really a research position, but you're doing like customer research on data that your company collects. And so I quit that job, the outdoor summer job, and I was like, you know what? I'm not getting a lot done. Not getting a lot done. Like it's such a time suck, and I'm gonna spend a lot more time living with my parents if I continue at this job. So I left there and was doing data science stuff full time. And then eventually by like February 2023, that's when I sort of threw in the towel on the data science train. And but I really credit that experience with the iOS part of my journey because without that, I wouldn't have had the app idea that sort of got me into iOS. So I had an app idea to do like a Pokédex thing where you could use the camera to identify your whatever Pokemon you wanted. So it would work like the Pokédex in the anime cartoon that I watched as a kid. And so I started with Angela Yu's iOS development course, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, and moved on after that to Hacking with Swift from Paul Hudson. I did both Swift UI and UIKit versions of the 100 days. And so that was February 2023. And so over the next year, I applied to what seemed like an infinite number of jobs. Altogether, it ended up being around 200. And honing my interview skills over the year. And finally, around March 2024, I found this one company based in Madison, Wisconsin, where I live now. And just like sort of luck of the draw, really, the recruiter contacted me and said like, hey, well, you'd have to move to Madison. So, and there's no like relocation bonus, but if you're still interested, you know, you can, we can move you through to the interview process. And at that point, I had been unemployed for about, or like professionally unemployed for about 2 years. So I was like, yes, please, anything, you know? And so I went forward with it, and I had been wanting to move to back to the Midwest for a while because like I actually went to college here in Wisconsin. And so that was sort of another sign that was pointing me towards this job. And so I had a few remote interviews that went really well. Sort of in the last breakout room, a lot of people were talking about how they have so many tech companies have like these really long and drawn out interview processes. But I found that this one, I had 2 or 3 interviews, separate interviews that were each like an hour in length. And the people were really nice, and it was pretty a comfortable experience, really. And so after those couple interviews, I ended up getting a long last an offer of an employment, and then I started the job in the beginning of May, right after Deep Dish Swift, actually, the conference that iOS conference that happens in Chicago every year, we'll say. Yeah, and so the past couple of months in that position have really been enjoyable. So I work with a lot of like frameworks that I hadn't touched before. So I do like core Bluetooth, core NFC, and now we're getting into core location as well. And with core Bluetooth and NFC, there's a little bit of really low level programming because we kind of have to create our data packets that we're sending over that connection. And so that's been really enjoyable. And it's a really small team as well. And so I'm getting a lot of hands-on experience. Like there's not a lot of red tape, I would say. So it's kind of like, we need this, and can you do it? And I'm like, yeah, we can do it. And then I go make an app, you know. And so the company we have a whole like suite of apps, and some of them are native and some of them are actually written with a cross-platform framework called Qt. I never knew that you could make iOS apps in Qt, but I found out soon after coming here. Yeah, so I think the whole process for me was really like this whole story was really like a low point in my life, especially since it took so long. You know, about 2 years out of work is not really something I would wish on anybody, especially, and that's even considering that I pivoted from physics. Um, so I think I wanted to offer a couple of tips that I had for things that I learned essentially from my journey. And so the first one would be to know your projects inside and out, and to make and for your projects to be more complicated than simple like CRUD apps like create, read, update, delete. So I didn't actually have like a set like whiteboard portion in my interview process, but I credit my success in the interview process largely with how I was able to talk about my projects, because they asked me a lot of technical questions about them, and I feel like knowing off the top of my head all of like the technical problems that I faced and everything in building the apps that I did, and I was able to show like a real passion to my interviewers, and they really resonated with it. The second thing I would say is to plan out your journey. So really, the part of the reason that it took me so long to go from physics to iOS is because I was sort of like bumbling around trying to find something that I would enjoy. And I feel like I didn't really have a clear roadmap for a long time. And so I think it's really helpful if you're doing something like I was doing, like pivoting from a different field, to make clear goals for yourself and think about the concrete benefits that that achieving those goals would bring you. So like if you want to make an app, you can find a course on a specific framework, and say like, oh, completing this course will give me the knowledge to do this. And don't even stop there, because that would sort of like get you into like the tutorial spiral. Set another goal for yourself. Like I want to build like a simple test app that where I can apply the knowledge that I get in this thing. Yeah, and then I think for the third tip that I have, I would try try not to like buy into the internet tech coach stuff that you see on Instagram. Um, it's really a grind to get any sort of good job nowadays, especially in a tech facing role. And I think now that really the way to do it um, is to be passionate about it and learn as much as you can and cultivate your skill.